Welcome to Coastal Front. Join us each week as we sit down with the movers and shakers of Vancouver to discuss stories of business, politics, accomplishment, and failure. Our aim is to keep you dialed into what matters most in our city. Now, here's your host, Andrew Johns.
Okay, well, here we are. One of my, I already know, favorite guests to come on to Coastal Front. Really good friend of mine, Yuri de Gaia. Yuri, you are one of the partners of L2B Global, which consists of two brands in the retail space, in the Bitcoin retail space, which is Bitcoin Reserve, and then your upcoming product, which is going to be Moon Tower. But more importantly, for my listeners and guests who are listening to the show, Yuri is my co-founder of HoneyBadger. And so I'm so happy to have you here again. You've been living overseas now, but you're back in town for a little bit, and you came in to see us. And there's so much to talk about in the Bitcoin space. I've been waiting to have somebody who knows this space, and there's nobody I know in the industry better than yourself that knows about Bitcoin. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for having me.
So Yuri, let's start off with the name, Yuri de Gaia. Where did de Gaia come from? How does that name come about?
Yeah, well, this is essentially a nickname, and it originated from me not really liking that people misspell or mispronounce my actual real name, which is Yerofeev in Russian. I come from Russia. So I just decided to assume a nickname for the public, and it's very simple. The prefix de means a place of belonging, so I come from someplace, and Gaia stands for the ancient deity of the whole planet. So it actually represents Earth itself. So
you're
Yuri
effectively
Gaia,
Yuri of the Earth.
Yes, Yuri the Earthman.
The Earthman. Okay, that's
a
awesome.
Global citizen.
A global
That's
citizen.
what it is.
Well, you are, and it's neat because you, if you don't mind me telling listeners, we won't spend a lot of time about your personal life, but you moved here to Vancouver a number of years ago, got into the Bitcoin space, met your wife, Breja, who's from Peru, and you've now had your little baby, your son, Mark.
Correct.
So you've got this Russian Peruvian boy who was born here, right? Was he not born here?
He was born here.
Yeah. So Canadian, Russian, Peruvian boy. That's so cool. Well, look, you're here to talk with us today about Bitcoin. There's a few different topics I want to discuss. I want to talk about the Lightning Network. I'd love to get your insight on what some of the best going wallets are for people who are maybe new to Bitcoin. There's a halving event happening later on this year. I want to talk about the business case uses behind Bitcoin and about other cryptocurrencies and anything else in the space. I mean, you eat, sleep, and breathe this every single day, so you're going to have a better take than anybody else on what's going on in the Bitcoin world. The prices of Bitcoin have been gyrating quite a bit recently with the rest of the assets in various markets. If we take a look here, currently the price of Bitcoin is just below $9,000 US. It was just a few short weeks ago. It was over 10,300. I think it was 10,300.
Yeah.
And it reached, I think, just over 11,000 about 6 months ago or 7 months ago.
About that.
So it's come down a lot here. Of course, we're in the kind of right now, as we're recording, is the 27th of February, and we're right in the beginning of what could be a really nasty market with the coronavirus kind of taking spread across the world. So far, it's only Thursday, but the Dow Industrial Index is down over 3,000 points this week alone. Unbelievable. One of the concerns I see with Bitcoin right now is the fact that it's clearly not demonstrating as being a reserve option for fear. Like there's a lot of people who've been saying, oh, it's a digital gold, right? And that typically when there's fear in the market, where do people typically send their money? They send their money to the U.S. currency, to U.S. federal bonds, and to gold. And actually, the only place we've been seeing money go right now is into the U.S. dollar, which has been strengthening, and into the U.S. Debt. 10-year U.S. bond yields have now reached an all-time new low at 1.25%. So you buy a U.S. government bond today, for the next 10 years, you're going to make 1.25%. Gold prices have been coming down, not up, and Bitcoin's been going down as well. Do you see any correlation, the long lead into that, any correlation between Bitcoin and other types of assets out there?
Well, in the Bitcoin community, we like to say that Bitcoin is an uncorrelated asset. So it's something very, very new. It's only 10 years old, so it's difficult to say right now. And there has been various models built by various researchers and fund managers who try to essentially explain previous price movements in Bitcoin and project the future price movements. One of such models being the stock to flow model. So I don't think that long term it's correlated with a lot of the assets that exist currently. But right now, why not? I mean, it's still a small market, and when people see blood on the streets, for example, in the traditional markets, they usually start going to alternative investments, right? And it can be real estate or gold. But as you mentioned, gold has been going down for a little bit now as well. Although I haven't been following it for longer periods of time, so I can't really say how it's been performing over a few years, for example. But as we
it's
can
been going
see,
up over a few years, but the last week it's actually been weakening. In the last few days, it's not shown the same kind of strength you would normally expect.
yeah, but at the same time, when we talk about Bitcoin, we normally talk about a longer time horizon for the investment because something that has been around for 10 years only is very, is very volatile. It's because it's so new and the market cap is so small. Obviously, it's very easy to manipulate, right? There's a lot of whales out there who have tons and tons of Bitcoins from the early days. And whenever they want, essentially, they can just put those coins on several exchanges and, have a call with each other and dump on the market for various reasons. Some of them take profits. Others, they like to manipulate the market because, that's how they make money. Or others, I would assume, manipulate it for political reasons. And there have been talks about the Russians or North Koreans or whatnot manipulating the Bitcoin market. So, yeah, we'll see the market strengthen as the liquidity goes up, as it becomes more liquid and more people coming in. And I think the upcoming halving will help with that.
Well, that's great, and that's a good introduction into the halving event. We'll talk about that in just 2 seconds. I did see a graph recently that I think was Jameson Lopp was the one who published this, and it was the volatility of Bitcoin prices on an annual basis, and it's on a percentage basis. So, of course, Bitcoin prices in absolute terms have been moving more than they probably ever have before. They move in movements of $1,000 per coin, which, of course, when you and I first started HoneyBadger in 2016, $1,000 movement would have been insane because when I bought my first Bitcoin, it was only $600.
Under 1,000 for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And when we started up the company. So $1,000 movement from $600 to $1,600 would have been amazing. But today it's not that as big in percentage terms. It's quite low, and in fact, the volatility has been declining.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, Ross, why don't we bring up a graph while we're talking here about with the long-term Bitcoin chart, because I think it's just quite fascinating to look at. Bitcoin is often referred to as the HoneyBadger of currencies. That's how we put one of the reasons we put the name HoneyBadger together for the company, and it just keeps coming back.
It does.
Right. Let's talk about this halving event. Maybe before we get into the halving event itself, for the listeners who are listening to this and really are not familiar with Bitcoin at all, can you just maybe in very layman's terms explain how Bitcoin is created in the first place? And one of the aspects to Bitcoin that a lot of people like you and I like is the lack of inflation. So can you talk about that for a minute and then explain how that ties into the halving event?
Yeah, sure. Well, if you know anything about how the US dollar or the Canadian dollars are issued, so essentially it's a very obscure process, and one never really knows what the amount of the dollars will be tomorrow or next year, 10 years from now, because essentially they are printed. And it doesn't always mean that there's a physical printer that prints all the cash. Yes, there is cash out there, but the majority of the dollar in circulation are still digital on the bank computers, right? So whenever a bank gives a loan, it creates more money. Now, with Bitcoin, it's a little bit different. When Bitcoin was created and launched in 2009, the issuance rate for Bitcoins themselves was baked into the protocol, and it is the most important feature of the protocol. First of all, the amount of Bitcoins that can be created is limited at 21 million Bitcoins in total. So, and the second important feature is that Bitcoins are issued at a very, very predictable rate, and that rate is about 10 every 10 minutes. There's a new amount of Bitcoins that is issued to the market, right? So, in the process of mining, and that's what miners do. Miners are essentially service providers who process transactions on the Bitcoin network in exchange for fees. At the same time, when they package those transactions into a block of transactions and produce that block, they also unlock what's called a reward, Bitcoin reward, right? Which at the very beginning was 50 Bitcoins. So every 10 minutes, 50 Bitcoins were issued in a block reward. But Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, put this condition in the Bitcoin protocol that roughly every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin issued per 10 minutes halves. So in 2009, it was 50 Bitcoins. Then in 2013, which is the time of the first halving, it was reduced to 25 Bitcoins and then to 12 and a half in 2016.
Right, which is when we started HoneyBadger. I think it was in the summertime just before we launched the company.
Yeah, and it coincided with a pretty significant bull run just a year after that.
That's right. But okay, so 2016 was the summer, I think, of 2016 that was the last halving event.
Yeah, and right now
we've got another one coming here.
Another 4 years.
They're not preset dates, right, Yuri? They're more based on the block itself.
Yeah, it's, I believe, 210,000 blocks. So after 210,000 blocks, if one block takes around 10 minutes, then you can calculate that the whole amount of blocks takes about 4 years to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with this process, essentially, if you're an observer, you want to see the future amount of Bitcoins in circulation, it's very easy. You just do the math and okay, how many Bitcoins will there be in 2040, 2050, and 60? So you will know that because the protocol is transparent that way. With the last Bitcoin to be mined by around 2140. So it is considered an inflation in terms of that right now these Bitcoins are not in circulation, but they come into circulation when miners, unlock them or produce them. However, because we already know the total supply, which is 21 million, it's also not really correct to call it inflation because they are already there.
Yeah.
All of them are already created in the protocol, but not unlocked yet.
Yes.
Right?
I think, Yuri, for those listeners who want to get a parallel to this, it's like a company that issues shares.
Yes.
You have issued and then outstanding. So there's when you're a company, you can issue 1 million shares, but you might only have 500,000 outstanding, with the rest sitting in treasury to be issued at a later point that are not in circulation. It's the same concept for those.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So how many Bitcoin are outstanding today out of the 21 million eventually in another 100 years from now?
Yeah, I believe it's close to 18 million already. So,
18 million.
Yeah, so the
majority of
it is already unlocked, and fewer and fewer will be unlocked as the years come by. But I believe by 2030, about 99% will be unlocked.
Right.
So with the last 1% taking 100 years to unlock, basically.
Yeah. Now, Yuri, as you and I both know, there is a lot of Bitcoin that get sacrificed to, I call it the Bitcoin gods every year. I know, and I'm sure you've got some great stories. I know where I've given up my we've given up Bitcoin through HoneyBadger, and just made mistakes where we've sent it to the wrong wallet or we lost a wallet. So, and I'm sure you've had the same experience. Has anybody ever tried to calculate how many Bitcoin effectively go into, I don't even know what you would describe that in the Bitcoin world, but go into the Bitcoin moratorium or the cemetery to never be recovered again?
Yes, definitely. There have been people who calculated such things, and essentially what they do is they do a blockchain analysis. They analyze the blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, for movements of coins.
Yes.
And what they can see is that some addresses, because Bitcoin is an open database, you can download it right now and see absolutely everything, all the addresses with all the coins.
Yeah,
You just
I
don't
can
know
see your address. You can
exactly
see mine.
if you know that it belongs
but you
to
have
me.
to know.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But and then they can basically analyze, okay, these coins haven't moved in 5 years or 6 years, and from that they can conclude that either the guy is really a long-term holder or the coins are lost.
Yes.
Right? So you can't know for sure, but people have made some estimates. Yeah. And
this is looks like 3 to 4 million Bitcoin being basically lost forever, meaning that those are probably ones that they've just not moved. Now, there is I believe I don't know if you call it a myth or there's a story out there that Satoshi Nakamoto has 1 million Bitcoin of his own. Is that true?
Well, we don't know for sure. Again, it's just you can only analyze the blockchain.
Are there any accounts with 1 million Bitcoin?
No.
There's no. What's
There's
the
no accounts.
What's the largest Bitcoin position in one address?
I don't really know, but it can be about 200,000-300,000 coins in one address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And exchanges like Bitfinex and other large exchanges, they often consolidate their balances, and they can move, 80, 50,000 coins in one transaction just to consolidate into one address, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you can see, 168,000.
Wow.
That's number one.
And at 10,000 Canadian dollars, that's 16 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you need to realize that with time, these these addresses, they go.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Bitcoins get dispersed, right?
Yes.
So people sell all the time, and as soon as a whale sells a portion of his coins, then a lot more people get their hands on coins, right?
Is there any estimation on how many users there are out there today, active users of that hold Bitcoin?
Again, this can be only estimated by analyzing the blockchain. Some try to say that it's about 30 to 50 million users, but again, some wallet services, for example, what they did is they counted the amount of wallet sign-ups to their service. But I can sign up with 10 different emails and just say, okay, this is 10 different users, right?
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of blockchain. It's extremely transparent, yet at the same time, it's super difficult to say what's going on.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, how about your sort of street level intel? You're obviously in this space every single day. Do you feel like there's more and more users adopting Bitcoin despite because it went through that period, as we know, from November of 2017 till January of 2018, where it had that massive spike, went up to like 20,000, almost hit $20,000 US.
Yeah.
And then the big, there it is there, followed by what I called the kind of the nuclear fall, nuclear summer, where it was like Chernobyl,
Yes.
right? I don't mind me saying so to my Russian friend here. It was terrible, right? It was. I mean, we were worried whether HoneyBadger was going to stay in business. And then it's had this nice recovery. But in your view, are there more and more users adopting Bitcoin every day?
I think so. Yeah, it just makes sense because even Bitcoin aficionados and promoters like myself work on it tirelessly to just spread the gospel of Bitcoin, right? Why it's important to have, and I'm pretty sure that a lot more people are adopting it for various reasons. You can see different reports by Bitcoin brokerage companies and apps. For example, Cash App just released a report that I think they had some kind of a crazy number of sales just in the first quarter of this year, and last year they had $500 million in sales. But you need to remember that it's a retail app that sells like $5 worth of coins, right?
Yeah.
So how many users is that buying Bitcoin if their sales were $500 million?
That's amazing.
Right? So
yeah.
it is. It definitely shows that it's growing.
Yeah.
Whether it's people playing around and just want to fool around and see what it's like to buy $5 for Bitcoin, or
Yeah.
it's a real serious institutional investor.
Yeah.
We see new names all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Cash App is, which is always being promoted by Joe Rogan on his podcast, is actually owned by what's that brand called? The
Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, Jack Dorsey's
Twitter.
Twitter, and what's the Cash App?
Square.
Square. That's it.
Yeah.
Square. Square owns the Cash App. Let's talk about business case uses for Bitcoin. When Bitcoin first started getting some traction in the media, we go back to 2011, 2012, 13, maybe more like 12, 13. There was a lot of talk about it becoming an alternative payments method to credit card and cash and Visa and checks. And it doesn't seem to have gotten the kind of, there were a lot of companies that were popping up saying we accept Bitcoin, and that seems to have died off. Almost any real retailer I go to these days doesn't accept Bitcoin. What are your views on Bitcoin being used as a means of payment today?
Yeah, not yet. Definitely a lot of people who thought that Bitcoin was invented to replace Visa and MasterCard were a little bit confused at the time. And I was one of them, maybe in the very beginning, but I was quickly sold on the idea that Bitcoin is more akin to gold than to Visa. So Bitcoin is actually a reinvention of money itself. It's an attempt to create a new sound money, or the hardest money ever created, as Saifedean Ammous likes to say, because essentially it imitates gold, but it also supercharges itself with these advanced features like extreme portability and transportability. You can literally teleport this gold over a communications channel, which is pretty much a superpower these days, with the gold being on the opposite side of it, being very bulky and slow and difficult to store, and you need physical security. So even like countries like Russia, who are stockpiling gold right now, they are spending millions and millions of dollars just to transport gold, right? Whereas you can send $1 million or even $1 billion in a single transaction with Bitcoin just for a few cents or maybe $1.
Yeah.
Like obviously the fees are in satoshis, they are denominated in the Bitcoin, but in terms of dollar values, it's about a few cents right now.
Yeah.
So I see it as a store of value primarily. However, payments are not to be dismissed. Some people like not to buy it, but to earn it, and which means that the client has to pay somehow. If I wanted to earn it, my client has to pay it to me. Or if I'm a store, then I have to have a point of sale system and accept Bitcoin. So payments is getting there, which probably leads us to the next topic, which is Lightning Network, right?
Yeah.
Because I believe all the payment use cases will be solved on the second layer, which runs on top of the main layer. So the main layer is basically the bare bones, the protocol itself. And then on top of it, you build any complicated stuff you want, because that is a lot safer than baking payments into the protocol. The protocol has to stay extremely simple and extremely closed, and because that guarantees its safety, right? The fewer attack vectors, the better.
Can Bitcoin be hacked?
Not Bitcoin itself. If you've heard of Bitcoin being hacked, in most cases it was exchanges or Bitcoin businesses that were hacked.
Yeah.
Like Mt. Gox and Bitfinex and all those other exchanges that were hacked. Bitcoin itself has not been hacked, although at some point, I think in 2012 maybe, there was an inflation bug in Bitcoin that was discovered very, very quickly and patched, and everybody upgraded right away. And so, it was not a huge issue, but potentially it was. An inflation bug means basically that you can issue as many coins to yourself as possible, and now you're rich without everybody knowing. But it was caught quickly, and I think at that point people understood that reducing attack vectors on the core protocol is one of the most important things to achieve. So
I think for the average listener to understand that is that with the way how the blockchain works is if you and I do an exchange, I'm going to sell you my pen and you're going to pay me in Bitcoin. So I have a wallet address. And first of all, people should understand that Bitcoin movement is I call it a pushing process, not a pulling process. I can't pull your coins from your wallet. I have to give you my wallet address and then you can push them over to me. But it's an irreversible movement, right?
That's correct. After at least one confirmation, it becomes irreversible.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that people should understand is that those confirmations come, and once they've come and they've been layered on behind them other confirmations for other Bitcoin transactions, reversing this is a virtually impossible operation. Even if you had all the whales in the world and all the strongest computers in the world try to reverse a transaction that happened this morning, there's not enough computing power in the world to be able to reverse that. Is that fair?
That's a fair description. Normally, 6 confirmations is considered a final transaction, whereas one confirmation is more or less vulnerable to being reversed if enough power is collected somehow, orchestrated. But it's very I think at this point it's very difficult because mining is the mining industry is so huge, and there's just so much hash power to compete with that it's difficult to pull off.
Yeah. Is the largest miner in the world still that, was it Jihan Lin, or what's his name?
Jihan Wu of Bitmain.
Yeah.
There have been lots of things going on with Bitmain, not probably the best company that should be described as an example Bitcoin company. Yeah. Although, to their credit, they did invent nice equipment at their time and sold a lot of it. So business-wise, they really made it. But then something clicked in their heads and they decided to go astray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the Bitcoin Jesus. What's his name?
Roger Ver.
Yeah, Roger Vers and VERS, and he's really not in the press anymore. I mean, I think he kind of blew his load in a sense with his conversion of Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, which he was trying to basically make it so that it would overtake Bitcoin. But that seems to have been a failed attempt.
Yeah, I mean, it seems so. I don't think. I think he's still in the press. It's just he has been blocked by most of the Bitcoin community, including myself. So I have no idea what's happening there. It's basically he's in his own little echo chamber, just preaching to the choir. And
I never hear about him anymore. I
Yeah,
haven't blocked him. I haven't blocked him. I don't see him anywhere. So
yeah, even you see, you don't even have to block him but he's, as far as I understand, he's quite active. Or if he's not that active, maybe he's planning something else right now. But yeah, I mean, we don't really care anymore.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much influence. I think he got rid of all his Bitcoin and switched into Bitcoin
And
Cash.
it's good that it happened because it kind of showed, along with other hostile takeover attempts like Segwit2x,
Right.
which was more of a corporate attempt to take over the Bitcoin protocol development, that it's impossible to do. I don't like talking about the community, but individuals who comprise the Bitcoin ecosystem just resisted any kind of changes that compromise the protocol development process, and it's great. I mean, all these people and these attempts, they only strengthen Bitcoin. It's called, as Nassim Taleb coined the term, anti-fragility. You attack an organism little by little, and by accepting the attack and repelling it, it gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Like breaking your bone little by little, so it becomes stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what Bitcoin does.
Sounds like a classic Russian line, huh? We're gonna break your bone just a little bit, little, and make it stronger. It's like it's KGB training 101, right?
Yeah, it's more of a martial arts thing.
Well, we're going to jump into Lightning Network, and we can talk about that. But I do agree. You know that Yuri, what you're saying. The more time I spend in the world of Bitcoin, it gets a lot of bad press because with any new development, technology or something, especially around the world of money, it always attracts criminal activity to start. I mean, I remember when when BlackBerry first came out with their two-way pager system. The only people that owned those things were drug dealers.
Yeah.
Right. And then eventually became not now, but eventually became like the number one communication device of choice for global CEOs of the Fortune 500. So I do think that a lot of times when you watch what criminals are doing, it can give you a good indication of where the market is moving. And there's been a lot of bad press, but every day I get more and more involved in this industry, I just see all the upsides that Bitcoin will bring to our society. It's a really liberating technology.
Yeah, well, my only comment is that first of all, criminals by nature have to be very innovative, and they have to adopt all the latest technologies to essentially circumvent all kinds of laws, right? And they adopt the best ones. So, as someone said, if only good guys use your technology is useless, right? And secondly, the US dollar still remains the biggest money laundering tool ever invented, right?
Absolutely.
So it's right there.
I heard someone say once that smart criminals don't use Bitcoin because they use US dollars, can't be traced.
Yes.
Hey, let's talk about the Lightning Network. What is the Lightning Network? How does it work? It sounds pretty cool. What does it mean?
The Lightning Network is a solution to the problem of payments on Bitcoin. So right now, you can still send payments on the main chain, and it's not as expensive. You know, it can be from 10 cents to maybe $1, depends on the transactions and how they are structured. However, there is a limit on how many transactions can be sent and included in a Bitcoin block on the Bitcoin blockchain, it can be anywhere from 4 to 7 transactions per second, essentially, which is not a lot compared to something like Visa or MasterCard that can process a couple million transactions per second. So people have been trying to think of a solution to this, and obviously the postulate is this, that the more centralized the system, the more efficient it is, right? Bitcoin is decentralized, so obviously it's not efficient for a lot of transactions. However, smart people, a lot smarter than myself, came up with a solution to this. Essentially, they created a smart contract system, which resides on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. However, operates on what's called a second layer. So essentially, you lock a certain amount of Bitcoins in a smart contract. It's basically a multi-signature wallet, but let's call it a smart contract with certain conditions, right? And while these Bitcoins are locked there, let's say you lock one Bitcoin, this one Bitcoin can be used an unlimited amount of times on the second layer, can be sent back and forth, before you unlock it and basically redeem it back to your main on-chain wallet, right?
Okay.
So,
and the speeds are much faster?
They're instant, yeah.
They're instant.
So,
Because that's been one of the downsides to Bitcoin is the speed at which one can exchange Bitcoin and the computing power behind that to process, to move that is for $1 million, it's sufficient compared to the Swift wire system or a check. But for me to buy you a coffee with a Bitcoin transaction is slow and cumbersome and costly. The Lightning Network is supposed to address that?
Exactly. So essentially what we do is you and I establish what's called a Lightning channel.
Yes.
Which is either I or you or both of us lock a certain amount of Bitcoins in a multi-signature contract. And when those coins are unlocked, again, they are released to myself and to you, right? But between the locking and the unlocking procedure, there can happen millions of transactions between us. Let's say, I paid you for a coffee, then you paid me back for a beer, and we can exchange these Bitcoins many, many, many times, right? And at the time that we decide to basically settle on chain, the very latest balance is what's going to be settled, right? So if in the beginning I had half a Bitcoin, you put half Bitcoin, and so it's 1 Bitcoin. Then maybe at the end I'll get 0.1 Bitcoin, you'll get 0.9, depending on how many transactions, right?
And has anybody out there built some technology around this to make it into a case use today, like where it can actually be used for commerce, like for?
Yeah, well, definitely a lot of people are working right now. The way I see it, Lightning is forming its own ecosystem.
Okay.
So there are already Lightning specific conferences out there. It's not Bitcoin, it's really about Lightning Bitcoin, right? So a few use cases are, for example, Bitrefill is a company that allows you to pay for gift cards and bill payments with the Lightning Network, right? Another company by Jack Mallers, who is one of the developers of the wallet called Zap, he just actually created quite a revolutionary thing that, you know how some people want to accept Bitcoin payments, but then they convert those Bitcoin payments to fiat, and that fiat is deposited into their bank account.
Mm-hmm.
So what he did is he did the exact reverse. You can accept fiat payments, but they are converted on the fly into Bitcoin and go into your Lightning wallet, right? So what I do is I pay at your store for a coffee with my bank account. Let's say, well, $5 is drawn from my bank account, but you as a merchant, you don't receive $5. You receive Bitcoin into your Lightning wallet right away, right? So that's one of the application for merchants who want to start stacking sats, as the meme goes, but they don't. But the market for Bitcoin is very small. There's not so many users.
Yeah.
However, if you can basically open to pretty much anybody who has a bank account, you can still collect Bitcoin because they are converted. The dollars are converted on the fly into Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So this is a pretty good use case, and other use cases can be, for example, private channels. Private channels is what I just described before, is a channel between you and me where we know that we are going to transact a lot of times in the future, right? We just lock some Bitcoins in a private channel, we transact, and maybe once a year we settle, right? That's a private use case, extremely privacy focused, because no one knows that transactions happen, because there's only two transactions that happen on chain.
On chain,
right?
Gotcha.
The locking and the unlocking.
Oh wow, that's really interesting.
Creating the channel and then closing the channel.
Wow, that's fascinating. That you could have a private channel that is not part of the
larger network.
The larger network, the blockchain.
Yeah.
Is there anything outside, other than, like, are there other Lightning Network type developments happening in the Bitcoin space today?
Definitely, there is a technology called sidechain as well.
Sidechain, yes, I've heard about this.
So sidechains are similar, and some people call them also layer 2 solutions. Other people call them layer 1.5 solutions, somewhere in between.
Yeah.
We at Bitcoin Reserve, for example, we utilize the Liquid sidechain. The Liquid sidechain was developed by Blockstream, one of the largest Bitcoin companies out there. So essentially, what it does, it looks like the Bitcoin blockchain, but with slightly modified features. For example, there are no miners there. There are 1 minute blocks instead of variable blocks like in Bitcoin. And all transactions by default are what's called confidential transactions. You cannot see the amount and the type of asset that is being transacted. And speaking of assets, you can, on the Liquid network, you can issue assets that represent certain things. Definitely opens the Pandora's box for another ICO mania, where you can just issue the worthless tokens. But their goal is to direct this movement into issuing securities, right? Because there are a lot of innovative companies that don't want to go through the traditional finance process of issuing securities and doing an IPO. They wanna issue real stock on the Liquid network blockchain. Basically, these are tokens that represent equity in the company, right? So this is already possible. It works. We are a member of the Liquid network right now, and what you can do on the Liquid network is, let's say you're a trader, you trade large positions, and you want to move Bitcoin from one exchange to another very fast to take advantage of an arbitrage opportunity, right? With the regular Bitcoin transaction, it's going to be very painful because you never know if it's going to confirm in 10 minutes or in 1 hour, right? Maybe mining is slow today and blocks are slow and you're not confirming in 10 minutes, right? With Liquid, you are guaranteed to confirm in 2 minutes because 2 confirmations is a final transaction, and 1 confirmation takes 1 minute, right?
Right.
So those exchanges that are integrated with Liquid and support Liquid essentially allow you to do that, right? The second good thing about it is that, how, due to blockchain analysis on the Bitcoin network, sometimes people can see large Bitcoin movements from exchange to exchange, and they can kind of guess, okay, this guy is moving huge amount of coins to Bitfinex. Most likely he's gonna sell it, right? On Liquid, it's impossible to know because all the amounts are hidden, and only the sender and the recipient can see the amounts. That's what confidential transactions are for. So it essentially prevents front running in trading.
Wow.
So Liquid is a B2B solution in my view, although I think they'll try to promote it among retail clients as well.
Yeah.
But we see it as, if it gets really successful, it can become the backbone of the future financial system where things like SWIFT and SEPA are replaced by the Liquid network, where you can issue tokens that represent Canadian dollars, and
on that note, did you see the Canadian government announced that they're going to look at starting to analyze the idea of issuing cryptocurrency, Canadian dollars?
As far as I understand, their resolution was that we're going to do it when it's too late.
Well, in my opinion, they're all too late because Bitcoin was already created in 2009. But of course, you and I have drank the Kool-Aid. What is a shit coin?
It's anything other than Bitcoin.
I knew you were going to say that. We talked about, you talked to me, you highlighted the token and the ICO market. So we do have some other cryptocurrencies, as you know, that we buy and sell on HoneyBadger, one of them being Litecoin and another one being Ethereum. It sounds to me like your Liquid network that you've described is kind of the same solution that Ethereum was supposed to address, and where all these other ICOs kind of spun off because most of them were created off of the Ethereum network. Is that a correct statement?
Well, not really. The problem that I have with Ethereum and Litecoin and all the others is that they created their own token out of nothing, right? So, and it's their thing, and the technology is open source, and anybody can create their token. And as the saying goes, if you can print money, you will print money. So now your job is to hire a marketing team to sell that worthless token to the next fool, basically, and capitalize on that, right?
Yeah.
So, but when the Liquid network was created, it was created with no token at all. So what you transact with on the Liquid network is actually Bitcoin. Similar to the Lightning network, it also gets locked in a multi-signature contract, and for the duration of Bitcoin being transacted on the Liquid network, it stays locked. As soon as you transfer from Liquid back to on-chain, that Bitcoin on the Liquid network doesn't exist anymore, right? So you transfer it there and then backwards. There's no token in the middle to be sold to others, and usually, when people talk about utility for such tokens, they just come up with all kinds of schemes, and some of them are, I think, outright fraudulent, while others are blindly fraudulent. They truly believe in what they do, but because they don't really understand that the economy usually tends to choose one single money, which is normally the hardest and the most sound money out there, right? they don't understand that concept that normally that comes from the Austrian School of Economics, and they just say, well, my money is better because it's faster, so it's gonna overtake Bitcoin. But it's not gonna overtake Bitcoin. Bitcoin has the network effect of 10 years. It's mining. Its mining industry is so huge right now, so that nothing can compete with it. You can say that it's wasteful or not. I believe it's not.
Well, I think a good parallel to that, Yuri, is back in the pardon me, in the 90s, when there was a comparison of the quality of the operating system for Microsoft versus Apple.
Yeah.
And everybody said, oh, Apple's going to overtake Microsoft because the operating system is just so much superior. It's simpler, it works better. And that was true, except for the fact that it didn't overtake Microsoft. And the reason was because Bill Gates just got a massive head start over Steve Jobs. And it never really did take over. They had to reinvent Apple into becoming a consumer products company because they could never actually take over the first mover advantage that Microsoft always had.
Yeah, I mean, first mover advantage is very. If things were created right now, if all these coins were created right now along with Bitcoin, things might play out differently. But Bitcoin was created in 2009. The first coin. It was created in the most fair manner possible, by an anonymous creator. It was issued to the public as soon as it was created, with no pre-mines, nothing like that, right? So yes, the first 100 people who learned about it are now the richest people out there, right? But it's only fair because you cannot say that you're a fair person. You're gonna airdrop your pre-mined coins to all the other people out there, but no one's gonna participate in your airdrop. You still own half of the supply, not more, and it just doesn't happen. It was probably a good place at a good time with what Satoshi did, after the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
But I don't think it can be repeated anymore. So
no,
it cannot.
Yeah.
Even if you create. There are,
but the thing is, here's the way. If you don't mind, Yuri,
Sure.
Here's what I think your listeners should understand as someone who knows Bitcoin not nearly as well as Yuri, but have a good sort of take on this in comparison to the rest of the assets in the world and currencies. If we use gold as a comparison, so you have gold, you have Bitcoin, you have silver, you have Ethereum, you have bronze, you have Litecoin. So you can actually have a handful of other cryptocurrencies that other communities might adopt, and it exists in perpetuity like Bitcoin and maybe has some relevance. But we've never, I don't know in an entire planet's history if silver has ever overtaken gold as the number one spot. There are other metals that are actually worth more than gold by the ounce, but they also haven't taken over because gold is the number one and has been for so many years the number one sort of choice of alternative assets to fiat currency and equities and real estate up until Bitcoin.
Yeah, and an interesting fact about silver is that in many bimetalist countries where gold and silver were used at the same time, silver was used for smaller transactions. So and that's what Charlie Lee did when he marketed Litecoin. Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin gold.
Yeah.
He even did the logo and everything in the silver colors, right? But silver was used for smaller transactions because gold is too precious and you cannot really shave pieces of gold to pay for a coffee, but you could with a silver coin, right? However, with the introduction of paper certificates, gold certificates, and banknotes that were backed by gold, suddenly you introduced transportability to gold, right? So suddenly you could have a stack of banknotes that represent minimal amounts of gold, and it's transportable. You don't have to shave pieces of gold anymore. And at that point, the significance of silver diminished dramatically. So it kind of, at that point, it became irrelevant as money, and gold was the king of money until the Federal Reserve was created, and things went down from there.
Yeah, then it became the U.S. dollar and still is today, but Bitcoin's a nice alternative. I love Bitcoin for its disruptive power. I feel that it's a great sort of check and balance for the governments out there that create fiat currency, and for the big banks who tend to become more and more powerful as time goes by. In wrapping this up, Yuri, a couple of things I want to ask you about. Do you have any view on Bitcoin prices? Do you have an opinion? Do you get excited when prices go up?
I used to be excited a lot in the beginning. So I lived through two halvings. The first one was very new to me. I didn't even know what a halving was. The second one was I knew what a halving was, but the hype got the better of me, and it's a euphoric state, and things seem like a paradise to you, right? Just before the crash. So right now, I don't get too excited. I accepted the fact that most likely it's gonna keep repeating itself, and the cycle, if you see on charts or just by general knowledge of how halving works, the cycle is around 4 years. So I would know that roughly every 4 years the price will go up because the supply will be cut in half. It's not that demand increases by twice as much. It's the supply gets cut in half, right? Which pretty much has the same effect, right, on the price. And it doesn't happen right away. It can take a few months maybe to settle in people's minds. But yeah, the price will go up, and I have accepted it, internalized it, and now I try to focus more on building products, building solutions, helping people get their hands on Bitcoin. I think the most important issue right now is to decentralize ownership of Bitcoin a little further.
I agree.
Just so we don't have so many manipulative whales out there. But you cannot avoid it in a capitalist system. There will be large holders, there will be small holders. That's fine.
Yeah. The Bitcoin industry and cryptocurrency industry has all sorts of symbolism and acronyms and strange ways of, it's almost like a different language. You keep referring to whales. Do you want to quickly explain to people where that whole phrase comes from? And there's a whole not ecosystem, but terminology behind the ocean and animals in the ocean and whales and how it relates to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where the word whale came in. I know that it means a large holder, holder of a large, and with Bitcoin going up in price, a large holder will soon become someone who owns one Bitcoin, right? So, but it's interesting that the community chose to use these words. I think they just continue the tradition of calling animal names, such as when the market goes down, it's the bear market. Goes up, it's the bull market. So why not use an animal name for someone who holds a large amount, right?
Yeah.
A whale is the whale, yeah. But definitely you're right. The community comes up with all kinds of memes, and we live by them, and it's just part of the fun. It's
there's a word which is HOLD. No, HLOD.
HODL.
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 Thank you. HODL.
Yeah.
What does HODL mean?
So HODL is a misspelling of the word hold, which in Bitcoin community means that you have to HODL or hold Bitcoin no matter what. When the price goes down, you hold. When the price goes up, you hold. Essentially, it's the mindset of the Bitcoin holder who will hold no matter what through the years.
Yeah.
Because
doesn't it stand for? Some people say it stands for hold on for dear life.
No, it's people who came later to Bitcoin
and said that.
Yeah. They try to
hijack the name
and maybe give it their own meaning. But it's not. It's just a misspelling of the word hold. Yeah.
You mentioned about one of the things that we need to see happen is just a lot more people adopt Bitcoin. So on that note, and to kind of start to wrap this up, let's talk about wallets and because I think one thing that people need to understand the basics of Bitcoin is you are your own bank when it comes to Bitcoin.
Correct.
You can't take your Bitcoin to a bank or to some. You have to have your own wallet to start, right? If I wanted you to give me a Bitcoin, it starts by me having a wallet to accept your Bitcoin on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, right now, institutions really like to custody their stuff with others.
Yeah.
They're just used to it, and
But isn't there a
companies.
phrase, not your coins, not your, no,
Correct.
sorry, not your wallet, not your coins?
They should be afraid of that,
Yeah.
but Fidelity already offers Bitcoin custody services, and
With
apparently they have.
insurance?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were going to go the custody one, you'd go with a name like Fidelity or Coinbase.
No, I would personally go with a wallet that I can control
Yeah.
myself.
But no, if you did go with a custody, if you're an inexperienced user, you don't want to have the risk of losing your coins on your own because you screwed
Yeah.
up.
It's a tough decision. Maybe I would do a little more research and go with what's called a cooperative or a collaborative custody, where essentially you don't custody it fully yourself, but you hold just one key, and then there's other people who hold other keys. So you won't lose Bitcoin if you lose your key because there are backups, right?
Oh, I see.
Other people who hold the keys to the coins.
And what would, if you did want to custody your own coins, like you and I probably would, what would be your recommended wallet today? What's an easy one to use on someone's phone?
On someone's phone, I recommend Blockstream Green. It's a
Okay.
great wallet. It supports both Bitcoin on-chain. It supports Liquid as well, so you can switch between the two.
Yeah.
It's a multi-signature wallet, meaning that not that you can have other people in your family or company have signatures, but one signature is held by Blockstream, the company, one by you. So essentially, if your seed seed phrase gets compromised and restored on another wallet or computer, they're not going to be able to move coins.
Okay.
Only your device can sign the transaction.
Okay. How about Samurai? Is that a good one?
Samurai is a good one. Yeah, they're innovating in the space of privacy a lot right now. They're implementing things like CoinJoin, which is essentially a mixing service that for people who are really afraid of tainted coins, and by tainted I mean coins that are dirty, that come from darknet markets many transactions ago.
Yeah.
Somehow linked to them. Some people want to mix those coins with other people's coins and then basically get mixed coins back, which essentially obfuscate and make the blockchain analysis more difficult.
Yeah.
Samurai is a good wallet for sure.
Yeah.
Blockstream is
How about
easier.
Mycelium? Is that still a good one?
Not anymore.
Okay.
It's it's gone.
Yeah, it is. Okay, good to know. Well, Yuri, this has been fantastic. I'm glad to see you again. I'm glad to know that your family's doing well. And we've got our halving. When is the halving event expected to occur?
In March, I believe first week of March, second week of March. Yeah, we have to. There's a clock, halving clock or something like that out there. There's all kinds of tools to track that stuff.
Yeah, great. Well, best of luck with Moon Tower, your soon to be launched new retail product, your Bitcoin Reserve, L2B Global, and everything else you're doing this. I think it's great that we have people like yourself. Oh, one last question on Twitter space. Now, your Twitter handle, you've got a plug for Yuri here. So this is your Yuri, this is your Twitter handle. So it's Y_DEGAIA.
Correct.
Right?
Just name and family name.
And you also have a blog post, and that's at your website there?
Yeah, I have a blog. It's a personal blog mostly. I started with the idea of just putting out my personal thoughts on various topics, and recently I basically came upon an idea of writing about citadels, and citadel is just another Bitcoin meme. A citadel is essentially a chartered or a private city, and that's kind of my longer term goal, is to build a private city, right? A citadel. Whereas my medium goal is just to build my businesses that will in turn fund the citadel in the future, right? Which is
Mark,
not really
your son Mark could become the mayor.
yeah, it's not about really mayor. It's not going to be a democracy. We're going to be full-fledged authoritarian, totalitarian.
Just like a quality Russian, eh? It's all the way through.
More of a corporate environment.
Yeah. Got it. Well, Yuri, it's been phenomenal. It's nice seeing you again. I'm so glad you've come in. We're going to have you in again sometime when we maybe after the halving event and talk about Bitcoin some further. Thanks for coming in. Yuri, you're a fave. Yuri de Gaia. one of my good friends and my founder of HoneyBadger, and now the partner at L2B Global. Thanks for coming on the show today, Yuri.
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.